Hi, hello, welcome, howdy. My name is Eric, and today we are going to be talking about Sergio Leone's phenomenal Western, Once Upon a Time in the West. Now, I am very excited to talk about this, but before we get into it, I want to talk about how I got it. So, remember how I was talking about we were going to go to the library and try to watch all of these on as much physical media as possible? Well, you can if you put a hold on them first, which I did not do. So I had to go on a little bit of a detour. So here's how that happened.
So I decided to enjoy this beautiful fall day, and I headed right for the library. Thankfully, using a local library is super easy and convenient to get to when it's only 10 minutes away. Don't worry, I was super careful, even though New Jersey drivers are notoriously bad. As I got to the library, I was super excited to start because this is my first time entering this building. But then this happened.
So they didn't have it on hold for me. It's not a flaw with the system. I didn't realize what I was doing at first, but that's okay. Apparently the hold is for somebody else, and I'm the next in line. They have the hold ready for today, and today's the last day, so they said if that person doesn't pick it up, then it would go to me. So it's possible that I can get it Thursday, but we're going to go on a little adventure and try to see if we can find it, at least like a physical copy. So there's a couple of pawn shops, DVD stores around. Good to give it a shot.
So I ended up going to this small mom and pop shop called Sun Valley Records.
Okay, so they didn't have anything, but the guy did tell me to go call this one place, Bandit Video, over in Turnersville, see if they have it. So I'm gonna try that. All right, so I just tried calling Bandit Video. Seems like a mom and pop kind of stop, but they didn't answer. They are open, so we're gonna try. Okay, so small update. Bandit Video, they answered the phone finally. I'm on my way. She said that it's gonna be hard to just like tell you if we have it because there's apparently thousands of DVDs. That's a good start. About like 8 minutes away or so. We'll see. So, after a while, I got it. So, very exciting. Just your basic DVD case, just the disc in there, and my receipt. But overall, I would say $5. Pretty good deal, honestly.
Now on to the spoiler-free review. Now, I would say that the characters were amazing, the acting was phenomenal, and the music was exceptional. Shout out to Ennio Morricone. He was the one who did all the music and composed all the music for a majority of Sergio's films. I thought Henry Fonda, I mean, come on. The stereotypical dad character doing what he does in the first 10 minutes of this film, groundbreaking. It was incredible. Also, a little bit controversial. I mean, in the first 10 minutes, sorry, this is a little bit spoilery, we see a shot of Henry Fonda killing a child. It's pretty bad. Shooting a child after he's shot his family. It's pretty rough. But that's amazing. That's such a break from character and such a great way to subvert expectations of Henry Fonda as an actor. So I thought that's really great. Little fact here is that the box office really did not take to it very well in the US, but internationally it did phenomenal. I mean, in one theater in Paris, it ran for 2 consecutive years. Now, this movie is about almost 3 hours long. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes, 2 hours 50. If you take that and you showed that every day for 2 years, that's over 2,500 hours. That's incredible. I mean, that's insane. I mean, could you imagine being that projectionist? Charles Bronson and Jason Robards as a pair together, playing harmonica and Cheyenne, they play off each other really nicely. And to see them kind of come together as a mystery man and an outlaw go against the villain, that was really exciting to see. And Claudia Cardinale, who played Jill McBain, I mean, first of all, she's gorgeous. Take a look at her. Secondly, her theme is what made me really fall in love with the music. I mean, take a look at this. Take a listen. Beautiful. Okay, now for spoilers. So if you don't want to get spoiled, I would go ahead and go to the time card right here. That's where I'm going to I would skip ahead to that for kind of an in-depth review without going too much into the story. So, bye-bye. First off, I have to get this off my chest, okay? You cannot get attached to anyone in this film. Now, I know you can say that for a lot of movies out there, but to give you some context, we start with the three amigos that are waiting for a train to come. Now, we don't know what's on the train at this point. We have no clue who or what they're waiting for. But for 7.5 minutes, Sergio makes us wait with them. And there is almost complete silence. I mean, you can hear the windmill creaking. You can hear amazing fly acting go onto the actor's face. Side note, apparently they put jam on that guy's face and they let a fly out one by one. Talk about torture, but amazing acting nonetheless. And for 7.5 minutes, we are waiting there with these three amigos, these three outlaws in dusters. And you see some of the best fly acting out there, the coldest stares, and probably the coolest hat trick I've seen someone do. The cowboy puts the hat on his head and there's water dripping down onto it. And at the end, he takes it off and he uses it as like a cup. It's so cool. It's so cool. I mean, anyway, so he does all that. All the three amigos are kind of waiting around. The train comes. We see it pass. A package gets dropped off. And then nothing. Until harmonica shows up, the mysterious stranger. And he has his own soundtrack. Charles Bronson is looking all cool, not a care in the world. He's got his harmonica with him. And those three amigos I told you about, dead, deceased, no longer living, kills them within seconds. All right, that's fine. We can all move on past this. Cut to the McBain farm, and we see Pa, and he's got his rifle. Shoots a quail down, boom. Little Timmy goes and grabs it, and he's like, "Oh, Pa, I'm so proud of you." And it's a celebration. They go to the farm, and Maureen's there, and she's slicing up bread, and he tells her, "Someday you're going to be able to slice bread as big as a door." I like this guy. He dreams big. A little bit abusive. He smacks Patrick like 3 times. Because he won't go to the train station. But we'll get there. Anyway, I really want to see this guy live. Oh, come on. Pa? Oh, sweet Patrick. Maureen! Well, at least the little boy lived. Little Timmy. I'm sure he's going to grow up to be... Oh, son of a... See what I mean? You can't like anyone. Except my favorite character, Cheyenne. This guy is so cool. I mean, surely nothing bad can happen. I need a second. All right. I want to talk about some of my favorite moments in this film. So I'll start from beginning, work my way to the end. So first off, that opening scene, waiting 7.5 minutes, as much as I joke about it, was really cool from a cinematic standpoint. You don't know what they're waiting for. It's really, really tense. And then, boom, within seconds, they're all dead. And we established this harmonica guy is really, really awesome. Then we move on to Jill and the train. And let me tell you, this tracking shot from when we see Jill on the train and she's moving and her bags get pulled over and she's looking at the clock, she's looking at her pocket watch and the times are a little bit different. She's in a new world. This is the new frontier. This is the West. I mean, things are so different here. And we'll learn a little bit later that she's from New Orleans, but just this new start is what she's looking for. And we get this tracking shot where she's going through the train station. She goes up to the conductor. The conductor, she's mouthing some words. And here we see the buildup of that music. And then we see her leave, and the camera pans up, and we see the boom town. Oh, I mean, phenomenal. We then get to a pit stop where Sam, her taxi driver, essentially, is going to wet his whistle. He goes in, and she follows a little bit after, and we get this great shot of her in the doorway and the light shining behind her, and all the bar patrons are kind of looking up like, huh? And she goes to the bartender, and she says, "Do you have any kind of way to refresh myself?" And he goes, "I've got a fresh bath out back. Only 3 people used it." Yeah. Anyway, then we hear a bunch of gunshots. And then in walks Cheyenne, my favorite character in this movie. I mean, it is beyond comparison. This guy is cool. So he comes in, and he looks around. We only get to see from here up on him. He looks around and he goes through. Things are all tense. He goes up to the bartender. Bartender's having put down a bottle. And this is where the framing of the shot really takes effect. He puts the bottle up to his lips, and then we see there are shackles on his wrist. He just shot himself out of whatever trouble he was in by himself. Talk about cool. And then we hear harmonica. Good old harmonica playing his little soundtrack without anyone asking. He goes over, plays a little back and forth with his gun. And eventually this guy in a foot bath pulls his gun, and Cheyenne pulls his first, says, "You better sit down." So the guy sits down. Cheyenne thinks of this opportunity to free himself, gives the guy his gun. Guy shoots off his shackles. Cheyenne's free. At that point, Cheyenne's men come into the bar and they're like, "Hey, boss, we're sorry we were late." And Cheyenne's like, "Oh, you little rascals. How dare you? I had to free myself." Because you can, King. You can. So anyway, harmonica comes up all looking cool. And he says, "Hey, have you seen Frank?" Cheyenne turns around. He's like, "I don't know who Frank is, to be frank." No, he doesn't actually say that. But then harmonica's like, "Oh, I remember those dusters. 3 men just tried to kill me in those dusters." And Cheyenne's like, "I don't know what you're talking about, bro. I have no clue. You could cut this tension with a knife." Sam takes Jill onto the McBain farm. And here we see the funeral procession happening. She's alone. She now owns all of this. This is hers. For the first time, I think, in her life, she owns property. And that's so important, especially for a woman at this time period. It was revealed that they had gotten married a month prior, in secret, in New Orleans. And so now this whole land, all of this Sweetwater, as Mr. McBain came to call it, is hers. Then we get this really cool scene where she starts searching for what Cheyenne and her call the why. Now, she's looking for any kind of gold, money. I mean, if their whole family was killed, there must be a reason. And I think this is something that a lot of modern movies miss, is the subtlety in dialogue, where you can kind of, between two characters, dance around a subject without actually getting to the meat and potatoes of what it actually is. We don't have to say, "Oh, he must have had gold." Cheyenne comes in because he's being framed for their murder. And he says, "It's interesting. Wouldn't you want to know the why?" And just from that little nugget, we get context as to, oh, maybe they are rich. Turns out, no, Jill's not finding anything. So now, what is she to do? There's also this really great shot of Jill in the bed looking up, and we see her through the lace. Ugh, phenomenal. Then we get to meet Mr. Morton and Frank. Now, Mr. Morton has hired Frank to be his right-hand man in his kind of gun for hire. Now, this dynamic is very interesting to me because Mr. Morton is a very high-profile man. He has TB of the bones, so he can't leave his train car, and he is desperate to acquire the McBain's land, and he will do anything in his power to make sure that that happens. Frank is that power. But whereas Frank is the muscle and the gun, Mr. Morton has the cash. Now, Frank, I get the sense from this scene that he kind of sees himself as kind of a businessman. Now that I've done a transaction, so to speak, you asked me to kill someone, you paid me, I killed those people. I mean, what more can you ask for? Well, Mr. Morton has a little bit of a problem in that Jill is now married to Mr. McBain. She owns all the land, so Frank has to take care of her. And Frank's like, well, we'll just send one of my men to do it. And then there's this little bit of standoff there. Mr. Morton's like, no, I want you to do it yourself. Your men are incompetent. And Frank's like, I could kill you where you stand. And he pulls out his gun. And we get this great line from Mr. Morton.
You'll never understand. This is one of them. You see, Frank, there are many kinds of weapons. And the only one that can stop that is this.
Bars! So he wants Frank to go take care of Jill. But Frank has other plans. Now, we're about to get to my least favorite scene in the whole movie. I want to preface this by saying I understand it was a different time period, okay? And that, things change, which is fine. Things can change, but this, I feel, was unnecessary. We cut to the McBain farm. Jill is packing her bag. She's like, I couldn't find anything. There's nothing worthwhile here. I'm just going to leave it all behind. Side note, it's kind of funny that if Frank had not done what he was going to do, then probably could have taken the land anyway. That's besides the point. So Jill is packing up her bags. She's going up. She's putting her bags in her carriage. And who should we hear but harmonica? So he comes all down. He's looking all intimidating. He's looking at her and he's like, I'm looking for Frank. And she's like, I don't know who Frank is. And I need you to leave. And he begins to rip off her clothes. Now, I don't know what was going on in this scene. If you do, can you please explain it to me? Because there's no reason I can find for him to have ripped off her clothes and ripped off her sleeves and ripped her all up and done what he did. I just don't get it. It actually annoys me. It actually really frustrates me because you're watching this really cool Western, then all of a sudden our mystery man, who could still remain a mystery without assaulting a woman, comes in and he rips off her, kind of chest area and rips her sleeves and is looking at her silver wrists and all that stuff. And then he goes, get me some water. What? Get you some water? You could have just asked. I'm sure Jill would have been nice enough to get it. You could still be kind of creepy and unknown. Go get me some water. Anyway, so Jill goes and tries to get him some water from the house, but Harmonica is all like, no, I prefer water from the well. Now here's where I can kind of see what he was trying to do. She goes out and we see that there's two men on the ridge and they're looking for Jill, Frank's men. They're going to go shoot her. And Harmonica walks out. They go to the well. And he says,
well, you'll hear a strange sound drop to the ground.
A sound? Like what?
Like that.
So maybe he was trying to use her as bait? Maybe? You don't need to assault her. Jill then goes to Wobbles, who looks a lot like Jack Black, and tells him, I need to speak to Frank. And Wobbles is very upset because people keep assaulting him to talk to Frank. Case in point. He then leads Harmonica all the way to the train car where Mr. Morton is and Frank is. And he tries telling Frank, I wasn't followed. You can trust me. I'm the best. You just got to believe me. And while he's telling him this, Frank looks out the car window and he sees a shadow going up onto the train car. And we get my favorite line in this movie, where he says to Wobbles,
how can you trust a man that wears both a belt and suspenders? Man can't even trust his own pants.
Gagged. He then tells all of his men to throw Wobbles out. Wobbles gets thrown out into the desert, and he looks under the train car, and who should we find? Cheyenne. Because you know your boy is going to be hiding underneath the train car, and he tells him, don't say anything. But guess what? Wobbles gets up, and he's like, Frank! But before he could say anything, talk about a clean kill. Then we see Frank capture Harmonica pretty, quickly, I would say. Harmonica gets tied up. And then we get, ladies and gentlemen, probably the coolest scene in this movie thus far. Cheyenne single-handedly takes out all of Frank's men. Look at this. John Wick who? Cut to Frank and Jill in a compromising position. Now, a little bit of backstory here that I didn't tell you at first, but if you've seen the movie, you know she is actually a lady of the night from New Orleans, and that is how we kind of understand why McBain was so attached to her and how he's able to marry her so quickly. And actually, looking back on this, I think it's quite interesting as a power dynamic for her to sleep with Frank. She's using what she knows. At first, when I watched this scene and watched this movie, I was kind of taken aback. I was like, "Oh, another sex scene." It's actually kind of a power move if you think of it that way. She knows how to use her body to make sure that she's protected. She even tells Cheyenne as much in one of the first scenes that she has with him.
Ma'am, it seems to me you ain't caught the idea.
Of course I have. I'm here alone in the hands of a bandit who smelled money. If you want to, you can lay me over the table and amuse yourself. And even call in your men. Well, no woman ever died from that. When you're finished, all I'll need will be a tub of boiling water. And I'll be exactly what I was before. It's just another filthy memory.
Fun fact, this was actually the first scene that the two of them shot together, which I thought was kind of funny. Very intimate. And Henry Fonda's wife insisted on being there on the day of shooting. So, go off, Queen. So Frank tells Jill that he knows all about her backstory because of a telegram that he received. Very future forward. Love to see it. Another scene I have to highlight is right after the bidding war for Jill's land. So, in essence, Harmonica ends up giving up Cheyenne as a prize to receive $5,000. And he puts that money towards the land. Now, at this point, we don't really know why Harmonica is trying to help Jill. We know that he doesn't like Frank, but he also doesn't like Jill. What's his endgame here? So he bids on the land using Cheyenne. Cheyenne gets taken away, and we get a really cool scene finally between Frank and Harmonica, just almost alone. Harmonica is looking out into the town, and we see a couple of gunmen start to form. So Harmonica knows what's up. And Frank comes in and puts down $5,001, and he puts it on the table. After some back and forth, Harmonica comes over, and this is so cool. This is so cool.
How much?
$1.
Incredible. Incredible. Power! After a shootout in the town, we see Frank come upon Mr. Morton's train car. it is surrounded by a bunch of dead men. And as Frank walks to the train car, when he gets to the end, he finds Mr. Morton at a puddle, crawling through the dirt and the sand to try to get to it. And as he's looking at Frank, Frank puts away his pistol. And there's this beautiful moment where we hear ocean waves kind of falling. So he never actually got to his destination, of course, because he's the villain. But we just hear that little fantasy in his head. And I think that's so brilliant. In the penultimate scene, we can see the town of Sweetwater being built by a bunch of Cheyenne's men. So Jill has come to accept this as her new path in life, which I think is awesome. We see a train yard being built through it so that a station can be built. And we see Harmonica sitting on a tree and whittling away. Frank comes upon Harmonica and he challenges him to a duel without really saying as much. There's a lot of silent tension between the two. So Frank gets off his horse. We get this really slow walk to the dueling grounds. And then we get to see, finally, Harmonica's backstory. The reason why he wants Frank and not anyone else to have him. You see, when Harmonica was just a boy, Frank killed pretty much his entire family. And we see Frank kind of come through in this beautiful shot as he fades into focus and he puts a harmonica in the little boy's mouth. And then we zoom out and we see that there's 2 feet on the boy's shoulders. And Frank tells him to play for his brother. And so all we hear is the harmonica theme playing. It's kind of saddened a little bit. And then we almost hear no dialogue at all. We just kind of hear the brother silently screaming at Frank. Frank's laughing. His men are laughing. There's one guy eating an apple. The brother kicks Harmonica out of the way. And just as we see the body fall, we see one of Frank's men bite into an apple. That is great storytelling. Truly. Frank dies, and he asks who Harmonica is. In a poetic fashion, Harmonica rips the instrument from his neck and places it in Frank's mouth. Harmonica rides off into the sunset. And we zoom out and see the title card, Once Upon a Time in the West. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is number 100, I mean, come on! What else do we have to see? I would rate Once Upon a Time in the West an 8 out of 10. Maybe an 8.5. The music, the setting, the characters, they were all phenomenal. I mean, I went on and on. They were all well written. I felt knocked down from a 9. Is that it felt a little incomplete, which is kind of weird to say for an almost 3-hour film, but hear me out on this. It seems like there was a lot of things that may have been cut, which, director's cuts, they exist. Apparently, there is a 5-hour director cut of this movie, which I'm sure explains a lot. But when I was researching this, apparently that a 5-hour cut was never released in an English dub. So, sorry. Maybe one day. The last things that I want to touch on today is the use of time imagery and clocks. We have 7.5 minutes of waiting for the train to arrive. We have Jill's pocket watch that displays 7:55 a.m. and the train station clock displaying a slightly different time. Then we also have the imagery of in the shootout in the town, when the rifleman is putting his barrel through one of the clocks, we see the shadow create a minute hand, which I thought was really cool. Time marches on. No matter what we do as human beings, time just keeps going and going and going. We are here in this present moment. You are watching this video of me. I'm recording this video, but the clock's still ticking. No matter how much money you hoard, like Mr. Morton, his time was numbered. No matter how much you think that, this is what I need, this is my goal, eventually time will just eat away at you. But I think Sergio did a fantastic job displaying that. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please hit the subscribe button. And I want to know, have you seen this movie? If so, what are your thoughts? And what are some of your favorite moments from this movie? Again, thank you so much for your time. Please comment your feelings and thoughts down below. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to talk to you about it. I really need to talk to someone about this movie. It's killing me. Thank you so much for listening. And next week, I'm going to be watching A Man Escaped by Robert Bresson. Thank you. Bye-bye.